There is a major rule change that's coming up in the upcoming NBA season, and that is the high five foul. Somebody takes a 3-point shot, you hit their arm afterwards, they're going to call a foul on that. And if they do, what do you think Steph Curry's scoring is going to look like this season? Well, based on what happened in tonight's preseason game against the Blazers, it could become a strangely spooky season for 37-year-old Steph Curry and the Warriors. We'll get into the nuances of that and some general player evaluation as always, and if that sounds good to you, be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and that like button so that this video gets out to all the Warriors fans out there. Steph Curry had 7 free throws in the first quarter of this game. Steph Curry usually doesn't get 7 free throws in a whole game, but he got fouled twice on 3-point attempts, and that's automatically 6 free throws at the line. There's a lot of implications for what that would mean for Steph Curry. First of all, if Steph has an easier time getting to the free throw line because he's getting fouled from the 3-point line, that will automatically get him into a shooting rhythm because he'll be shooting a bunch of free throws. And you know what it is with Steph. All he needs is one shot to see one shot fall through and he can just go on a tear. You know, that's just the getting into the rhythm of the game kind of thing. And when you allow a guy like Steph Curry to get into a rhythm because he's actually getting calls when he gets fouled shooting 3-point shots, this has been missing for a chunk of his career. This has been an ongoing thing in Steph Curry's career where he gets fouled at the 3-point line and he does not get the call because the refs have been screwing him for years and years and years. And it's really hilarious that the NBA decided to come up with this sudden rule change while Steph Curry is now 37 years old and going on 38. But you know what? I'll take it. Because even at 37 years old, you give Steph Curry the proper amount of free throws that he should be getting, because we all know that the NBA and the referees have been screwing Steph Curry for years on end, because we all know that the NBA is a Nike league. So I'm really surprised that they've come up with this new rule, and I don't know how consistently they're going to be when it comes to actually calling those fouls. But defenders fall on him, hit his hands left and right, all the time, every single game without fail. And if those start being called, those are extra points for Steph Curry. Those are extra points per game that he's going to average, and he's just going to be even scarier than what he normally has been. So interestingly enough, at the age of 37, Steph Curry may look like a different kind of cheat code this season if this works out the way I think it's going to work out. You know, Steph Curry, when used properly, is the greatest point generator you have ever seen in your life. And if he got half the favorability of a guy like SGA, for example, I mean, Steph Curry would be averaging 30 every single season. So truly, I'm quite curious what his scoring is going to look like this season in a full season with Jimmy Butler. A lot of selfless guys in that starting lineup. Jimmy Butler, Al Horford, Draymond Green. But man, Curry played 27 minutes in this game. He played the first 3 quarters, 28 points, 6 of 15 from the field, pedestrian, but 12 of 13 from the free throw line. 28 points. 6 rebounds, 5 assists, I mean, Jesus. 37 years old, 6'2" point guard, and this guy is about to have a historical season. We don't appreciate this man nearly enough. I don't know how many years this man has left in the NBA as a primary player, as a franchise player. I mean, for all we know, it could be another 3-4 seasons. But either way, it's already unprecedented what he's doing. Despite all the frustrations and the stresses of having to follow this team for so many different reasons, starting with Joe Lacob, the owner, Steve Kerr, the coach, and all the incompetence that has been surrounding this team for at least the last half decade, I'm just grateful that I've been here the entire time for Steph Curry's entire career, watching him grow into what he's become. And to me, there is no question in mind. This guy is the greatest basketball player of his generation. He is on par with Michael Jordan in terms of his superstar nature and just utter greatness. Yes, he's stuck on 4 titles right now, which in and of itself is a complete aberration for somebody of his size, being the best player on the team while being the smallest guy on the team and winning more than a couple of titles. And I truly believe he would have surpassed MJ easily in rings by now had it not been for the incompetence of the front office, the general manager, Bob Myers for years incompetent, Steve Kerr complete incompetence, and yet here he is, Steph Curry, still at the age of 37, still on a quest to win more titles. And although the roster still has flaws, the Warriors are going to make serious noise this season. I mean, even ESPN is talking about they're going to be a top 2, top 3 team in the league. And that's because nobody can deny or ignore the fact that Jimmy Butler is on this team now. And Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, when these guys are on the floor at the same time last season, even with the flaws that they had on the roster, they were essentially the best team in the league. And now with the additions of Al Horford, DeAnthony Melton, and these additions, Seth Curry even, there's a lot of potential for the Warriors to look pretty spooky this season. Anyway, I'm going to do a full diagnosis of what I'm expecting from this team and predictions and stuff like this once they play their final preseason game of the season on Friday. For now, let's take a look at some of the key points of what happened in this game, what we saw, what players did what, and how certain combinations looked versus others. So as you know, in the last game, I made a video about how Podz was showing some potential of being able to take a leap this season, and that narrative went straight down the toilet where Podz shot 1 of 9 from the field against the Blazers in this game. And here's the thing about taking a leap. You have to show that you are at a different level, you are more confident, and you are more consistent in your level of production. You just can't have the type of game that Podz had in the previous game and then end up having the type of game that he had tonight. You have to be even keel, and you have to show that at some point throughout the course of a game, you can assert your own dominance and put your imprint into the game. That's what taking a leap is all about. Showing that you are consistently playing at a certain level. So honestly, I'm pretty inclined to say that Podz is going to be who he's been for the first 2 seasons. Well, let's say for a chunk of the second half of last season when they brought Jimmy Butler and Podz and Moody, they started together with him. And there were those second quarter and fourth quarter segments where Podz was like the secondary playmaker scorer next to Jimmy Butler, and he looked pretty good in that role. And I do think that he will continue to be good in that role. I just don't know in the playoffs how viable he's going to be. You know, having to play him puts the Warriors in a conundrum because oftentimes the Warriors end up putting out a 3-guard lineup. You know, when Jordan Poole was still on the Warriors and that season after they won the title, I wanted Jordan Poole off the team, traded, gone, whatever, because the 3-guard lineup of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, an aging Klay Thompson who just wasn't the same anymore defensively and wasn't good enough as a small forward, and then Jordan Poole in the backcourt alongside Steph Curry, that defense was never good. They were a net negative, a notable negative, that trio of guards. And it's like the Warriors have so many guards. They have to play Buddy Hield, they have to play GP2. Melton is on board, we'll see what happens with Seth Curry. There's just too many guards on this team. No matter how I look at it, this team needs a consolidation. The lineups that Steve Kerr put out tonight, just a bunch of 3-guard lineups that makes no sense. They were bleeding points, no POA, no defense whatsoever. I mean, Podz, Pat Spencer, Buddy Hield are on the floor at the same time to form a 3-guard lineup. And I just can't understand where the advantage is there. You are so weak defensively. There is no defensive force there whatsoever. Great teams have a primary POA and a secondary POA. In that lineup, the Warriors have no POA. And then you have Jonathan Kuminga at the 4. He's not a 4. And then you have a small, undersized Al Horford at that center spot. Or you'll have Quinton Post in that center spot. Yes, he's taller, but defensively, he's just not good enough. And then again, same thing with Trace. He's also 6'9" and an undersized center. Needless to say, Draymond, 6'6", when he goes to the center spot, is always the Warriors are grossly undersized. And now they added Will Richard to the equation. And you know what? Will Richard is interesting. He is a rookie, but he is a 4-year college player, and he is a champion at the college level. And that is noteworthy. That is relevant. And I have to say, he looks like a veteran. He looks like he knows how to play. He knows how to make the right plays. So for him, it's a matter of how efficient can you be in the first year in the NBA from an offensive standpoint. And well, tonight he was pretty efficient. 4 of 7 from the field, 3 of 5 from the 3-point line. That is super relevant. You know, he almost kind of feels like another version of DeAnthony DeAnthony Melton. Obviously not as good as DeAnthony Melton, but he definitely does seem like a Steve Kerr type of player. And honestly, the last thing I want to be interested in is another 6'4" guard. But defensively, he might have more potential than some of the guards that are already on the roster. Buddy Hield, Podz, I wonder if he's comparable to Moses Moody in terms of overall defense. I don't know about that. I need to see more of him. Obviously, we're not really going to see a whole lot of him this season. I think he's mostly going to be in the G League. And outside of a whole bunch of injuries, I just don't think that he's really going to get an opportunity. But as a three-point shooter, a POA defender, he has my attention. Statistically, Kuminga had a pretty notable first half. He had 7 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists. I mean, kind of mirroring what Podz did in the previous game. It's almost like they had a role reversal in terms of overall usefulness. Unfortunately for him, he ended up getting ejected at halftime because he was arguing incessantly with the ref because he felt like he got fouled on a drive. Nothing was called. Apparently, he made contact with that ref. And yep, he suffered the first ejection of his career. So he didn't get to finish his nice overall game in that first half. Let me say this about Kuminga. He's made some improvements in terms of his playmaking, in terms of trying to see the floor, in terms of trying to find his teammates, all these things. And I know that for the most part, Steve Kerr's biggest problem with Kuminga is what he cannot do offensively and how the spacing looks when he shares the floor with certain guys like Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green, for example. But my biggest issue with Kuminga has always been on the defensive end of the floor, whether he's a possession by possession guy or not. Does he have the physical tools and the speed and the strength and perhaps the capability of being that type of player? I mean, he has the build for it, but he's molded his game from the get-go as an offensive talent and not a defensive talent. Guys who are defensively talented come into the league as a defender from the jump. Look at a guy like Toumani Camara. Defender from the jump, imposing defense. You are either a persistent defender and a tough defender and a defender that nobody wants to face, or you're really not. And no matter how you slice it, I don't see Kuminga being that type of powerful player for this team. If you're a Kuminga fan, obviously you don't have to like that. Kuminga, at the end of the day, may have all the potential that his fans may want to see out of him if he had the opportunity to. We all know, again, he's not going to start for this team. He's not going to have the opportunity for stardom on this team. And the Warriors need a wing, a 3D wing to add to what they already have right now. Not another scoring guy who's kind of lackadaisical and may or may not show up on the defensive end on any given night. So all I'm saying at the end of the day is that Kuminga on the Warriors is just not a good fit for what they're trying to accomplish. Trying to win a title is not a joke. Do you know how many mega superstars have been in the NBA that were never able to win an NBA title? Superstars. Just global stars that have never been able to win a title. That is how hard it is, and that is how elusive it is to go and win a title. So if you want to go and try to win a title, you need the most reliable guys, the guys with the least amount of fundamental issues, the guys who are utterly strong whenever you put them out on the floor, and they're not out there doing some weird, wacky, goofy stuff that should never happen for any team that is trying to contend for a title with a piece doing those kinds of things on the floor coming off their bench. So, in that sense, there's a lot of guys on this roster that I feel very iffy about. It's not just Kuminga. Even Podz, the most I can see out of Podz is playing something like a Jordan Poole role come playoffs where he's coming off the bench and playing maybe 20 some minutes. Like Jordan Poole, he was a starter for a chunk of the season, and then you go into the playoffs, and ultimately he starts coming off the bench because his defense is not good enough, and by the time they get to the finals, Jordan Poole is averaging 20 minutes per game. 20 minutes per game. And that's what it took for the Warriors to win a title, with him playing a vital role as a scorer, as a microwave scorer in the 20 minutes that he got to play in the finals, not as a starter. Does Podz have the potential to be that type of player? Maybe. He didn't show a whole lot last season in the playoffs. I feel like he was absolutely dreadful and awful in his first playoff experience. And to be fair to him, he ran into some very tough teams. The Rockets were a 2nd seed last season. People forget that the Warriors were the 7th seed and they took down the 2nd seed last season. Everybody just assumed that the Rockets were the worst team because they were going up against Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry. But that's what the Western Conference is moving forward. There's going to be a bunch bunch of tough teams, and they only got tougher going into this season. Okay, enough of the kids. Let's leave that alone and let's put that aside for now. I want to talk about Al Horford real quick, because every time I watch him, Al Horford just looks so reliable. His defensive instincts, even at this age, are so good, so strong, still a shot blocker, still a rim deterrent. And tonight, particularly in the second half, in that third quarter, with Kuminga out of the equation, they had to insert Trayce Jackson-Davis into that starting lineup next to Al Horford. Now you have a two big man tandem, and you have two reliable defenders, rebounders, this kind of thing. And in order for a tandem like that to work, one of those guys have to be assertive on the offensive end of the floor, and that was Al Horford tonight. He had a three-point shot, he had a little shot in the paint, and he was a little more aggressive. And that unit, in the first 7 minutes of that third quarter, shut the water off of the Blazers offense. The Blazers only scored 12 points in that 7-minute span, and that's the kind of defensive intensity and reliability from a championship caliber team that I am looking for, that I am always looking for. Is your defense set? Is the other team uncomfortable? And are they not getting what they want? Are their stars not getting going? And are you protecting the paint? And are you controlling the boards? And are you controlling the game in that way? Because if you do that, Steph Curry will come around inevitably, and that's how you assert dominance. And then Jimmy Butler takes control of that second unit and continue to build upon whatever the starting unit was able to do. Speaking of TJD, there are some things in this game that I really like seeing from him, especially on defense. There's a couple of times in that fourth quarter, I believe, where he ended up in an ISO situation against Shaedon Sharpe, a really quick guy, a guy that can blow by, very explosive. And Trayce, well, he stayed in front of him. So Sharpe, both times, had to rely on some step back jumper that Trayce contested, and both of them were misses. And that's the kind of thing that we saw from Trayce, especially in his rookie year, where he showed this mobility as like an undersized big, a 6'9" guy. But the smaller guys, the speedier guys, are not able to just blow by him and get an easy bucket on him. Even Al Horford, when he was on Shaedon Sharpe earlier in the game in an ISO situation, Sharpe kind of blew by him and took a really easy lefty shot over him at the rim. So that's not an easy matchup by any measure, but that's the kind of thing that would allow TJD to be impactful for this team. When the playoffs come around, especially, you need real defenders, guys that can get stops and muck up the game. That is what you need, more than the shooting prowess of Quinton Post, although Quinton Post's shooting ability is very relevant. So they have these different pieces that can play different roles and give the Warriors what they need depending on the situation. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. I do think, again, at the end of the day, Steve is going to put Quinton Post ahead of Trayce Jackson-Davis in the rotation. So Trayce, to start the season, is probably not going to be in rotation. That's what I think. But I do feel like the Warriors have enough shooting. They have enough offense as they are. They need to shore up their defense. They need to shore up on their size. They need to shore up on building an imposing defense. And that is what is going to turn them into a true title contender this season. So yeah, that third quarter looked very interesting with this unit. Steph Curry, Podz, Will Richard, Trayce Jackson-Davis, and Al Horford. Their defense looked pretty good, and the Warriors have reinforcements coming to begin the season. And when that happens, it could be a very fun upcoming season. Okay, this video has gone on long enough. There's one more game to go in the preseason, like I said before, on Friday, and the season officially begins next Tuesday. Exciting. Thank you so much for watching as always, and remember, Steph Curry is the GOAT.